Hi, I'm Simon and I'm here with Liam today, and we're going to talk about 4 tips how to improve your MQL to SQO. So to start us off, I'm going to just go through all 4 tips. So we talk about alignment and qualification today. We talk about how we prevent lead leakage, how to improve the marketing op feedback loop, and then lastly, how incentive plans play into the mix as well. So Liam, let's start off with alignment on qualification and definition of terms. How do you see that playing into improving the funnel?
I think you need to start with knowing what a good MQL looks like to be able to then know what like a good sales qualified opportunity or SQO looks like. And I think that's where people often fall down as they're not all looking at the same way of like categorizing what that MQL or SQO, whether it's good or bad, and then that can affect then how that's then represented through the funnel. So obviously, like with an MQL, like intent matters loads. It's not just about it being, you know, of the right fit for the company, which is also important. But we need to then factor all these things in. So we need to think about the intent of the MQL. Has someone completed a direct demo request? Have they come through pricing, or have they come through they're a sign up and they've actually are a product qualified lead, and then they've been through usage and now become an MQL, or have they requested to speak to sales? All of that has like a huge impact on the conversion rate then down the funnel. And I think you have exactly, and then within that as well, you've got to look at maybe your own internal classification of it, like what grade do they fall into? Is it a grade A, B, or C? You know, is this like, does the characteristics of this MQL mean that they convert at like a much higher rate through the funnel? And I think all of that needs to be aligned on so that the team knows exactly what they're going after, what MQLs are good to bring in, which ones actually convert, and where you can like focus your time, and then by focusing your time, improve that MQL to SQO rate through the funnel. Then I think it's really important to have that alignment on the SQO as well. So it's really, you can't, if like one side of like the sales org, maybe like the inbound reps who are like speaking first on the discovery call are like over qualifying, then they may prevent leads getting through to the AEs when actually they could have got through and they could have made it become a sales qualified opportunity. They could have been a great opportunity for the business, or they could be underqualifying and they could be putting too much through to the AEs, which then uses up a lot of the AE time, which maybe prevents and means that their ability to close good opportunities is hampered because they're focusing on too many bad ones. And it also may cause them to just inflate the pipeline and make it hard to judge actually how much qualified pipe we have that is likely to close. So having that definition means that and making that sure that's super tight, stops that back and forth where we're like arguing over maybe what a good opportunity looks like and what should be categorized as a sales qualified opportunity, which ultimately sort of actually wastes time from what the task at hand, which then directly affects conversion rates. Also, if you're stricter in your qualification, you'll naturally see those conversion rates like later down the funnel rise, and the ones at the beginning drop. So your MQL to MB will drop, and your SQO and maybe your MA to SQO will rise. And if you're more liberal in that definition, then you'll see it go the other way. So the definition part is extremely important because it really impacts the benchmarks you'll also be setting for yourself. And exactly the same on the MQL front. If you have a very liberal definition of what an MQL is, then you're gonna see a lot more of them come through, and the volume will be really high. Whereas if you have a stricter definition, then you'll be able to restrict that volume, and then that'll have a huge effect on what reps get used to and how much they can handle as well. So yeah, I think that's why that definition part really matters.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It sets the goalpost of where do you start the funnel in this case, and where do you know what's the goal of this kind of little part of the funnel, which is important to make the decisions for all the steps in between.
And then I suppose going on to the upside, actually, how does preventing leakage, and lead leakage then actually impact that MQL to SQO rate as well.
Yeah, so I think, like, as I said, like we have now the starting point, the MQL, and we have the end point for now, which is the SQO, which is the big part where I'm looking at from marketing ops perspective how we can improve. I think the first bit you need to do is really set up all your steps. What are the steps from someone fills the form, there's an MQL to the SQO, and the definitions help you define the start and the end post, but then you need to see what are all the steps where people could fall down, where like the conversation might stop, where we see someone being qualified out. And I think once you have mapped all those steps, you want to make sure you also capture the data of why they're not going further. In some steps that's easy at the beginning, you have the MQL, and the next step is probably like the first touch, like when is the first person getting touched. You don't really need to do any additional data apart from having that first touch, so is it happening, and if it's not, why is it not happening? But then we have like the qualification call. So at that point, you want to make sure that qualifying in or out comes with a reason, especially qualifying out, because people who drop off the funnel there, you need to know what are the reasons. And we reevaluate the reasons. We have another category. The moment it goes too big, we go back to the sales and the MDRs and say, look, you qualify out stuff, and you just say other, we need to get more detail. Let us know what we're missing, what reasons we haven't caught up, maybe because it's a new reason, business changes, the environment changes, we need to take that into account. So we want to really look at each step of the funnel, make sure we have all the data points to look at conversion rates, and then look at the conversion rates by segment, by country, by inbound method. Is it a PLG, does it come through like a product, did it come through a demo request, a pricing form? All of these have slightly different conversion rates, and then you start really optimizing every step and see why do they fall off, and if they fall off, what can we do to fix it? And sometimes fixing one problem will create another. Like you said, like if you be more strict in the beginning and you say, we give people early on more power to qualify out, that will mean that then the MQL to, let's say, demo request is going down, but the demo request to then the sales qualified out goes up. So you want to make sure, okay, what are the changes we're expecting, which should be the same or improve, and what are we willing to say we let it slide. For example, if you book less meetings with people, but the meetings have a higher success rate, that's great actually, because it gives everyone time back. But at the same time, as long as you don't, have your revenue go down, that's perfect. So it's really about, like, for me, looking at all those different steps, looking at all the data points and segments, and then going to marketing and to sales, going to you, that, like, when I say, look, I see an issue here, like conversion rates at this segment with, these reps is not where it needs to be. What can we do? Where is now the little tweaks we can do to improve that? And that's where really the qualitative feedback comes in, and where, we have those discussions with sales and marketing and say, ideas, what ideas we can do, what do we expect this to do to the funnel. And then for me, last point is, like, I'm always trying to automate as much as possible, like try and reduce human error as much as we can, and take every kind of repetitive and like manual task away from people doing the job. Because, especially if you like a sales rep at any kind of, stage, early on, inbound rep kind of, or like later on, you want to focus on like having those sales conversations, having the good conversations, bringing value to the customer. You don't want to focus on, how should I follow up? When should I follow up? Like, where we can, we want to automate that.
So I suppose everything would start with a hypothesis of how it would impact revenue, right? So even if you make a tweak here and it affects here, the ultimate thing is that you want it to impact revenue positively, and you don't actually mind if there's any other changes in the funnel itself.
So for us, it's like, because now the SQO is kind of like almost like the best handover point right now for us between marketing and sales, where like the responsibility changes from like who has the most responsibility. The moment it SQOs, the salespeople are very much on like, this is part of my pipeline now. I'm getting, my manager on this. Whereas, so like for me, like if I increase MQL to SQO, if I create more SQOs, that will automatically lead to more revenue. It's not that easy. Obviously, you need to look at the whole funnel, but like if we think about where does everyone's responsibility start and end, or not start and end, go bigger or smaller, I focus on, that point. But like what happens between MQL and SQO, like if something goes down but SQO goes up, I don't really care. That's a sometimes a win, sometimes a loss. You know, if we have less MQLs, but they lead to more SQOs, I'm happy. Like, I think you need to really look at, you know, what's the outcome, and ultimately it's revenue, but for me, from a marketing ops perspective, I can use SQO as like a goalpost.
And how do you use then feedback from the operations team to then improve the MQL to SQO rate? How do you use that process?
I think feedback is super important, and it needs to be in a loop. It needs to be both ways. You know, I bring stuff to sales and marketing, sales and marketing brings stuff to ops. And one thing I've seen is, especially if we talk about conversion rates, you need to give some time to the funnel. Like, you need to let the funnel be and, you know, have time to convert. Actually, sometimes I remember when I started, we had like weekly, you know, decks on like conversion rates, and it helps you show if something goes really wrong. You know, like, you will catch that. So you will have to have some sort of like weekly, daily view on certain things in case something breaks down completely. But from like a making those tweaks perspective, it doesn't tell you a lot this weekly. Because, like, you know, like, there's weeks, for example, when there's like holidays, bank holidays, you only have 4 days a week, you know, that will impact the funnel in that week. But like longer down the line, you will see kind of like this equalizing factor. So before we look at individual problems in the funnel, I always say, like, give the funnel some time to just, you know, come to its whole, you know, final data almost. And then I always come from the point of like, I'll bring marketing and sales the numbers. So I'm like, these are the numbers, this is what the numbers tell me. Let's start a conversation here. And I also sometimes bring ideas that are plainly numbers, you know, plain numbers based. So, you know, we could do this and this should do this. And then the conversation starts, and sales and marketing and ops talk together about, okay, yeah, what are the actual tweaks, and are the ideas that maybe ops sometimes brings forward a bit too technical and not realistic, or is it a good starting point? You know, like, what are the things we can do?
Yeah, I think what ops can do though in that instance is bring in what, like I kind of talked about earlier, is like, you know, if we can improve MQL quality here, then that will impact this, and then that is when marketing can go away and think about how they actually go about improving MQL quality, how they can maybe bring in more people of greater intent, for example. Or maybe it's like, to the point, it might be like, oh, actually, you know, sales are passing over too many poorly defined SQOs, and then it could be like, how can they be involved in how can they like qualify better and pick out those best opportunities. So you can see that in the number, and then the departments can go away and actually figure out how they're going to do that.
Yeah, and then we can help making sure that we do think through all the implications of those changes, because every change will, I always think about it like, you fix something else will come up somewhere else, which you can then fix, but like, you need to have those like reportings and like the funnel metrics in place to know, okay, this is what we expect to change. This is also the things we think could, you know, inadvertently be affected. And then we just measure it and make sure we keep on top of it, and we feedback, like ops feedbacks to like sales and marketing, say like, we tried this is what we're seeing right now. Do we still think this is a good idea, or, you know, what else can we do?
I'm thinking about then, I suppose, like how sales themselves can have an impact on the conversion rates. How do the incentive plans that then are used to encourage the right behaviours in the sales team help impact that MQL to SQO rate?
Yeah, I think incentives plans are actually a very important bit of the whole picture when we look at the funnel, because the moment a human is involved, we need to make sure that human has the right incentives and like on the outcome that we're trying to achieve. So we should definitely be very clear about like, what are the incentives, how are they structured, what do we think, what metrics are they actually impacting. So for example, we think a lot about conversion rates. So certain reps in the organization are actually commissioned based on conversion rates, because when we think about like, you know, let's say Christmas period, we have lesser inbounds. They can't generate the same amount of SQOs of like lesser inbounds. And at the same time, there's times of the year where like there's a lot of inbounds. We want to make sure all of them gets followed up. So like when we think then about conversion rates, for example, as an incentive, we know that that will lead to, you know, everything gets followed up in the same way, sort of. Obviously, this has like a flip side, like that means from an operational perspective, we need to really manage workload for people, because, you know, if it's going up and down like crazy, that is not sustainable. It also means that it has other factors, like the moment you talk about conversion rate, the focus a lot about like what is the baseline for this conversion. So the MQLs we're getting in, should I get them? Because if everything I get, I need to convert, I'm trying to push away everything I know is not going to work. And there's like always frictions, and it's, I think, therefore just important to think about what do we want to impact, what could be impacted advertently, how could the metrics be tricked? Because like sometimes it's like you want to improve something, let's say we want to improve MQL to SQO, and then just like the easiest way to do that is just SQO much more maybe, because like the reps think the more we SQO, the more likely someone like the sales rep will actually pick one of these up. So then you need to think about, but that just wastes everyone's time. If like the MDRs just give everyone, SDRs give every single meeting to the rep. We want them to qualify, so we need to find ways to allow both things to happen and balance out the, we want a high number, but also we don't want to waste anyone's time.
Again, it's, you do take one action, there might be another one, but at the end of the day, you've just got to find the right incentive that optimizes revenue.
And you need to really think about like all the points, how they will be impacted, how they could be advertently impacted, and you have to go through iterations. Like we review our commission plans, like our incentive plans very regularly to make sure it does what we think it does. And we have written down like, this is what we want to achieve with this plan, this is the conversion points we want to increase, and then we see, is this happening or not? And if it's not happening, why not? And then we can go from there and iterate.